Well, hello and welcome to this week's A Photographic Life. Do we think that photography should always please us? Should it always be something we like looking at? Should we always be looking at it and thinking, I understand that? That it keeps us within our comfort zone. Is that a good thing? I don't think it is. I recently, and you may also recently, have become aware of a French-Canadian music duo called Engine de Poitrine. As they say on the internet, they've taken it by storm. Now, all I can really do is suggest you check it out. I think you'll find it challenging. You might find it ridiculous. You might hate it. You might love it. But it's certainly different. It's certainly two people saying, we can take this form of music, this creative form, and we can recreate it. We can change it. We can challenge it. We can challenge the ear. And in a world where everything is very saccharine and AI, and I have to use the word boring, something new and challenging gets noticed. Now, because I'm a man of a certain age, Engine de Poitrine I thought was really interesting. I wouldn't want to listen to an awful lot of it, but some of it is good for me. But also because I'm a man of a certain age, I'm prone to looking backwards and remembering music that it reminded me of. Captain Beefheart is one, Can are another, and The Fall. There's also elements of all of those. Music that I listen to, and don't listen to, actually, because I find it unlistenable to. Captain Beefheart's Trout Mask replica, for those of a younger age, check it out. I think you'll know what I mean. And certainly some of the albums by The Fall, although I do really enjoy some of their most challenging work. What I'm really getting to here is the importance of not doing what everybody else does, not falling into the Photoshop trap, not buying plugins to make something look like somebody else's work, not replicating photography that's out there, not following rules that other people give you. Instead, what I'm promoting this week in the spirit of Engine de Poitrine, and I say available everywhere on Spotify and YouTube and so forth, is to reject the formulaic, what I refer to as the Coldplay of photography, and instead start to look at things you don't like, start to look at things you don't understand, start to think about, why do other people rate this work? Some of it might be Emperor's New Clothes, but I guarantee not all of it. I always enjoy receiving your letters, your messages, your comments, so why don't we dig into a few of them now? Dear Grant, I've been enjoying the podcast, particularly the Avedon coverage. I saw the show at Gagosian and loved it. Yes, lots of questions about the prints, which range in price from £100,000 to £900,000. From my research, it seems that when they printed the set for the Amon Carter Museum, they also made 2 sets of limited editions. 1 set of 3 and 1 set of 6, I believe different images. The ones on show at Gagosian do seem a little creamier than some I've seen in the past. Would be interesting to compare the ones at the Amon Carter. Maybe that's time. I assume they come from the Foundation or Gagosian or both. I would imagine the Foundation buy them back in what they do come up for auction at a reasonable price, for when they do, I should say. I know you got to work with Avedon. I did. Sadly, I never met him, but in 1979 I went to New York to photograph and interview Andy Warhol and Diana Vreeland for my school magazine Lipstick. I met Diana Vreeland, who's a great fashion editor, if you're not aware, one of the greatest of all time, in her office at the Costume Institute, which was in the basement of the Metropolitan Museum. She was extraordinarily friendly, warm and enthusiastic, full of energy and totally inspiring. Mid-interview, she called out to her assistant, "Get me Dick." And the next thing, she was talking to Avedon on the phone and told him that he had to meet this cute, young English photographer. Many years later, I brushed shoulders with Avedon at Galway Airport, a porter cabin and a runway that no longer serves commercial flights. I had just got off a plane and was coming into the porter cabin when out he came. I could hardly believe my eyes. We literally brushed shoulders. I figured out later that he had probably been shooting the series of Isabel Adjani for Egoist magazine. All the best, Perry. And that's Perry Ogden, who you can hear taking on the Proust quiz. I really enjoyed talking to Perry. That was a few episodes ago. So drop Perry Ogden into your search engine at UMP and you'll find that. Here's another letter. Hi, Grant. Just read your mini essay entitled "I'm Bored with Photography, Are You?" I don't know if you ever listened to the Mood podcast hosted by Matt Jacobs, but he had a conversation with the writer Brad Zeller recently where there were a few distant echoes of what you wrote about. The relationship between the written word and photography in particular was, I felt, explored in a thought-provoking fashion, possibly worth a listen if you have time. In relation to your other recent writings, I too have recently acquired a number of copies of an old magazine, which I initially was unsure what to do with. The magazine in question is Lenswork, and it is now proving a constant source of stimulation and interest, with contributions from the likes of Bill Jay and Elliot Erwitt. The images are great and the writing exceptional and accessible. Unlike me saying it. I'm afraid that I don't think I would swap them for your copies of the BJP. Keep up the great work, Keith. Well, if you are interested in Lenswork, and of course Bill Jay, I'm going to encourage you to check out the film Do Not Bend, the photographic life of Bill Jay, in which the founder of Lenswork, Brooks Jensen, speaks about Bill and Bill's contribution through endnotes. That is available, that film, for you, completely free. It's a full-length documentary feature on YouTube. As far as the podcast, Matt Jacobs and Brad Zeller, I was aware of Brad Zeller, but it was really good to hear him and hear his story. I have to be honest, I watched it, but I thought it was rather odd because the host, Matt Jacobs, seems to want to be in a kind of a Hollywood movie approach to how he was being lit and filmed for his podcast, which I watched on YouTube, whereas Brad was just sitting in a corner of the room. It seemed a strange juxtaposition there, but hey, we all have our own opinions. Here's another opinion, another letter coming in. Hi, hope you're well. So, Algorithms sent me an Instagram post. Someone was happy they won an award. Fair enough. But the first thing I thought was, AI? Not because the nice, well-lit, detailed, glowing and 3D-like photo of Elijah would look like AI, but because the award was from something called AIAP. A bit of searching revealed this is the preferred acronym for American Illustration, American Photography, something that seems to predate the rise of AI. It really does. An illustration in magazines, which is where these awards come from, definitely predates photography. But anyway, unfortunate for them, says the contributor. Not only does the first part, American Illustration, get abbreviated to AI, immediately leading to confusion at best, or wrong conclusions at worst, but searching for them by acronym, AIAP, yields a bunch of links to AI apps and websites listed first. Funny old world. Cheers, Dean. That's something that maybe all of us should be thinking about. Another little short message here. I have to say, quite often the messages and letters I get sent are very long, and so I do have to edit them down a bit. Anyway, hi Grant and Bill. Your conversations have been my favourites for years, and your recent one about acknowledging our predecessors prompted me to write. Thanks for the conversations over the years, and all the best for the future episodes. Take care, Andras. Here's another one. Hi. Entered photo competitions? Yes. Paid an entry fee? Yes. Won a few? Yes. Reasons for participating? Ego/entertainment. Ego? As a human, I'm not embarrassed to admit that seeing my name, my work, and the word award in the same sentence fires up my brain cells. Entertainment? I may be an outlier, but deep diving into the judges and to a lesser degree the theme, then selecting my images is the contest. Why? My photography is not a team sport. Every negative I print is my favourite. From time to time, I need a shake-up. Entering competitions are one tool I use to force myself to reduce my bias and really look at image. Competitions, portfolio reviews, next-door neighbours, any form of feedback is valuable, no, essential to making you a better photographer, human. And that is from Rick. That obviously a reference to the slightly fruity, rigorous, energetic conversation that Bill Shapiro and I had concerning photo competitions. Again, that's another podcast to check out of the archive. Another one here. I really enjoyed listening to you recently. I would tend to agree with you on most points. I think that's with me. That's rather nice. I would love to hear what 2 or 3 current under 40-year-old photographers Grant would say is of the quality that you believe. That's obviously to Bill Shapiro again there. Bill Davidson actually is. Was it Bill Davidson? I can't remember. But anyway, go back and listen to that episode. In a minute, I'm going to give you some of the photographers under 40 who I do think you should check out. So thank you to the person who sent me that. And I think that one came in via Threads. And all I've got on there is Kazi, Kazi. So apologies, Kazi, for not having your full tag on that. Oh, it was Jack Davidson that it was referring to there, because the next message in mentions Jack Davidson. Look, it seems as if this is a well-organised podcast. Well, maybe it does. Obviously, it isn't. But anyway, this has come in from Leah Francis to Bill. Okay, I find it so odd that Jack Davidson is getting all this attention for this show. Also, if you want to hear about Jack Davidson, go back to a previous podcast of Seesaw with Fiona Hayes, where we spoke about the particular exhibition in London, which may still be on, may have finished. Anyway. Maybe I have a semi-unique perspective, but for a long while he was basically Kathy Ryan's photographer of choice, of course, the great photo editor, I think, at the New York Times, but always happy to be proven wrong. His work has been out there forever, and he's been pulling off these, yes, I'll say it, very original and mad scientist-like pictures, not only in the art world, but mostly in the editorial world. That's absolutely true, which in my opinion is highly unusual. I'll disagree on that, but anyway, at least these days, perhaps. Anyway, also, I never enter photo contests because they're too expensive, and what's the point? The only extremely rare time I would do so is if there was a photo editor or art world person that I wanted to see my work. Better are portfolio reviews, you get actual insight and real engagement from a person you've wanted to meet. Well, I'll agree with that, but as all of you listeners know, I'll only agree with that if they're free. But let's not get into that conversation for now. That's the end of our edit of letters and messages. As I say, I get so many of them, but do please keep them coming, and I will curate some of what I think are the most interesting for a future episode. Now, I just mentioned that, I promised you that I was going to give you some names of some photographers under the age of 40 that I thought were particularly interesting and worth checking out, as a response, actually, to the message that we just got through there through Threads. Or actually, I think it was through Instagram. Anyway, doesn't really matter, does it? The way it gets to me, it gets to me. I wouldn't mind if it came via pigeon. That would be okay also. So I sat down to think about photographers who I thought, and this is only a personal, of course, opinion, were doing really interesting work that I thought was worth noting. Now, here was the challenge for me. There are no shortage of photographers under 40. Of course there are not. The challenge was how many I was aware of who were doing work that I found particularly interesting, that wasn't repetitive, that wasn't generic, that felt as if it had a soul to it and a reason to exist, which for me is the key element of making photographs. There has to be a why, and there has to be a reason for it to exist, other than just an aesthetic piece of something. Anyway, so I started to think of some names, and then I thought, well, I better just check how old they are. And there were a number of them who were just in their mid-40s, or perhaps just reaching 50. So I went back and I kept looking and looking and looking, and I spent a lot of time doing this. And I'll be honest, completely honest at this point, I found two. I found two who I thought were really well worth checking out. Now, one of them will be appearing on a future episode of the podcast, completing the Proustian quiz, which thank you very much for all of you saying how much you're enjoying those conversations. I think particularly the Lynn Goldsmith one was an absolute joy. So if you haven't listened to that episode, I recommend you do. Anyway, I could only come up with two, and I'm sure you'll say, I've forgotten this person, that person, this person, whatever it may be. Do please get in touch and let me know the photographers under the 40 that you feel I should know about. But the two I'm going to mention are, first of all, Cengiz Yar. Now, Cengiz's name is spelled Cengiz and Yar, Y-A-R. He's based in the States, he's based in Texas, and he is a documentary photographer and also actually a picture editor. I think that his work has something about it within the documentary space that felt fresh to me. You might disagree. But anyway, the conversation with Cengiz is really great. So do listen out for that, and do check out his website, which is cengizyar.com. The second photographer was actually recommended to me by a friend of the podcast, David Eustace. And this is photographer Sayuri Ichida. And that is Sayuri, Ichida, Ichida, sayuriichida.com. And her work is the complete opposite to Cengiz's work. It's incredibly romantic. It's poetic. It's very beautiful. And I think it brings an understanding to what photography can be if you move away from what it has been. That might sound a little bit academic. I apologize for that, but I do recommend you look at the work. So that's two for you from me of photographers under the age of 40 that I think you should look at. Now I'm throwing it over to you, and it's your chance to let me know all those photographers that I'm either not aware of or who I rejected. If you are kind enough to get in touch, then do please try and give me a reason why you've recommended those photographers. And who knows, I may read them out on a future episode. I think it would be fair to say that the world is in a state of total confusion and insecurity. I don't think anybody knows what's going on or what the future holds. And as I do every week, I'm going to suggest that in the coming week you take care. But I don't think I could ever have meant it more than I do today.